All right, I'll go ahead and call the Historic Preservation Commission for Thursday, March 10th, 2016 to order. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes? And is there a motion to approve, or are there any corrections?
I move to approve. It looks pretty much like what we had talked about.
And is there a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and seeing no one in the crowd for public comment, we'll move on to, well, there's no crowd. Seeing no one in the seats for public comment, just for those that can't see over the seats, we'll move on to old business, where we have the first item on the agenda is the report from Deborah on the historic plaque design, and looking forward to this update.
Okay, I will be brief. I spoke with Jeremy, and I know that Tammy did send you my latest communications regarding the plaque. Things are moving along. They're ready to go. In fact, I called Jeremy this morning and just to ask him if, in fact, he had yet received a check, and if he did not, when he received a check, how long it would take them to begin fabricating. The fellow that's working on the actual cast will need 2 or 3 days to refine that of a mold, and then they can start manufacturing these. So he asked, I said, give me a time frame, and throughout mid-April, once they get money in hand, he said to allow at least till the end of April. So I thought that would suit us. I don't think we need to speed that up. We don't.
No.
I think we had said tentatively May, didn't we? We needed to have them by May.
Well, I think that would be great timing for Historic Preservation Month. That would be another thing we could promote and unveil. I would like to understand, though, what took place between our last meeting and this meeting, because I did look at the documentation, but I was trying to figure out just a brief explanation so I understand.
Sure. Do I have a copy of it here so I can refer specifically?
And if not, you can borrow mine. There was something I was reading about aluminum, and then were there any changes in pricing as well between our original quote that was
cheaper?
That's what I thought you had said.
It became cheaper. They were $179 per.
Oh, per. But what about initial fabrication?
Oh, that isn't going to. The fabricating is going to be the same.
Okay, so I'm looking.
It's going to be the
second
per
page,
plaque.
so.
I think all of them are here, including the ones that were just sent to me as alternatives on different finishes. There were some high finish Nemica. Okay, so this is going to be what we finally end up with, the high polish, which should
on the second page,
which should look like the photograph that I sent you of the plaque that I encountered while in Washington. Yes, which this isn't really a very good representation, but if you can imagine, this is, gleaming like a belt buckle.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. That's nice. Okay.
And
so that's the high polish.
So that's the high polish. He still recommended coating it with the lacquer. So.
And the lacquer will protect it from the elements, I'm assuming.
Supposedly.
Yeah.
And they guarantee
will it preserve the finish?
Well, that's.
Or will it have patina? Okay. Or will it patina?
No, it won't allow it to patina.
Okay.
So I don't. And he also said there's a lot of variation in that process of acquiring a patina.
Okay.
So depending on, because bronze is a mix of like 3 or 4 different metals, so they're not all going to darken or turn green. Some of them will have more brown flecking in it, so you just never know how they're going to look. You can't predict.
So that last picture of the cast you showed us, I think, of the coin, actually. So the raised portions will be this high polished brass, but then the lower plane will be a darker bronze still. It'll have that 3-dimensional.
Right.
Okay.
Because mechanically, they're not really able to get in those little crevices and, make them shine with
But
that
it
same
won't
high
be
luster.
that brown.
No.
Okay.
There won't be any brown period
That,
going on.
I forgot what
initially.
he called that before.
It's just
but-
going to be a softer luster.
Okay.
The
Compared to
background.
last time. Yeah. Because I was on board with everything, you said last time, and I wanted to see what changes, if any, were made. They say sculpted by our artists and cast in aluminum for future plaques. That's fine. Wasn't there something about making 3 or 4, all 5 casts? If you were to place order. Oh no, that wasn't it. Okay, so in understanding the cost, when I look at this, the $350, so the $179, it will be the per price. Okay. And they'll just change the date. Date changes on each plaque. We're still getting 2. The one for the diesel plant and the one for the Heritage Center.
Correct.
Okay. And then the fabrication of the cast, everything else is $1,458.
Yes.
And I did not know what the previous cost was that we went to city council for. That's what I was.
Actually, when comparing the two,
Okay.
the new invoice that we received is $40 more than the original invoice, and where that cost comes in is the high polish. That went up $40. So other than that, it's the same, and there is not a problem with that.
There isn't.
No.
So the residents going to say maybe we could go back to the vendor and just point that
Yeah.
out and say what. Because let's see. So we're doing high polish. We're doing the anemic lacquer still.
And truly, going backwards, I don't remember
didn't
what our
change.
initial finish was that we had declined. So,
Yeah, I couldn't
Everything
find
else is the same.
it. Okay.
Anna, I wanted to ask
That
you
won't be an issue.
too. I know that the diesel plant is changing hands. It sounds like.
Yeah.
So how are we going to handle that? Are we going to attempt to designate that property prior to sale?
The property's already designated.
Okay.
Yeah, it's already on local designation.
And the new owner's aware of the fact that it is a designated property.
As far as I know, that is what the planning staff would be
Okay.
communicating. Yes.
Just wanted to make sure.
So, and I don't know that that's been finalized. Has it been finalized? I know they chose someone, but there's a due diligence period
Yeah,
that they're in.
All right, so the
Process of
vetting process
negotiations
is still
right
going
now.
on.
Okay, processing. Okay.
All right. Well, that's exciting.
Yes.
So are we good with moving forward on this? And I will get with Jeremy about the check and everything.
Yes. I mean, do you need any kind of motion or okay?
We're good.
I am
Thank
good.
you,
What
Tammy.
about you, George?
I'm fine.
Okay. Thank you so much, Deborah, because I know
You're
this was a lot
welcome.
of hard work going back and forth.
I hope it.
Great job, and thank you for your patience.
My pleasure.
Okay, sorry. Moving forward to the letter to property owners, report from George Childers. Did everybody have a chance, or did you, Deborah, have a chance
Yes,
to?
I did look at it.
Okay. And I did too. Was there anything you wanted to start out with comments on, or are you looking to us?
No, I just pretty much took the suggestions of committee from our last committee meeting and made those changes. I did do a little bit of restructuring. I don't even recall now. I think it was maybe down in the 3rd paragraph or somewhere thereabouts that kind of make it a little bit clearer. But
Okay.
pretty much took from committee's suggestions at the last meeting and incorporated those.
Well, I'm going to preface my comments with an apology because I know you've worked really hard on this, and I don't know if it's because my name was on it this time.
I know.
I said, let me look at this again. I do have a few changes, nothing drastic. It was some wording, and I had been down in West Palm Beach last week too with a preservation group, and that may have spurred some of the meanings. When I read it again, there were just some meetings. There were a few things I had mentioned, I think, that were minor about adding, such as in the first sentence where we say the City of Vero Beach conducted a survey. I think we just need to add a historic resource survey. So there's minor edits like that. And otherwise,
that's in the first paragraph.
Yeah, conducted a historic resource survey instead of just survey.
Okay.
But I think the major change that we made at the last meeting was talking, and I remember making a comment, it was actually in the minutes because I reviewed the minutes about talking about, you used the word upgrade, but we talked about how historic designation may lead to the rise of property values. And I realized through the minutes there might not have been a final direction, but I really want that. So let's say 1, 2, 3, fourth paragraph, second sentence, reword that sentence, because I mentioned this the last meeting, but I am concerned someone's going to get that and their neighborhood is not run down and take it the wrong way. And I feel like we need to present that differently. And then the last paragraph, we talked about the fact that we cannot be the contact folks for this, that the planning staff has to be. So we would put Gail Lafferty in her contact name. So having those changes, George, I was going to offer to kind of take on this draft of what you've done so far. And I thought if we need to, and especially since now I know you're not going to be here next meeting, we can even have a special meeting so we can wrap this thing up, because I really didn't want to do that, have any changes either, and you work so hard. And then I also know we have outstanding reviewing the demolition, so we don't want to get these out anyway till we get that buttoned up as well. So that buys a little time. If you're okay with it.
I'm fine with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you want to just send that, did you do some Word?
I did it in WordPerfect.
WordPerfect.
Yeah.
Okay. That's fine.
I can convert it. In fact, I think I have it also converted into a PDF.
Yeah, send it along to
if
Tammy.
you have Acrobat.
But I don't have much. I just thought, well, instead of trying to give these little pieces to you, I can just tighten it.
What I'll do, I know most people work in Word. I'll just convert it from WordPerfect to Word and send a copy to Tammy through Tammy's office, and she can forward it on to you.
And then I'll put a deadline of I'll get this out to everybody next week.
Okay.
And that's what we'll have to figure out is, do we want because I was thinking we would want this to at least go out by May.
Yes.
And again, we could tie it into Preservation Month.
Yes.
But I like George's to be able to give feedback. So would we be supportive of maybe having either a special meeting or moving our meeting? Would that be possible in April? Or is that, I'm looking at Tammy too, just seeing the logistics of that. Would that be complicated logistics?
No problem.
Okay. Just because obviously you've played a major role in this communication. Would that be
That's
agreeable
fine.
to you?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Now we're missing 2 other board members too
Right.
for their feedback. Can we discuss that? We can't really discuss that with them, or
Well, what
Would
we
you
can
just
do
find
is I can grab the calendar. We can look at the calendar, come up with the date, and then I can get back with the other 2 members to make sure that that date works for them.
okay,
Let me just grab that real quick.
okay. And my preference would be probably either the following, the last 2 weeks, sometime in the last 2 weeks. Because that way we'd have the plaque, we can wrap up the letter, get everything going for Preservation Month.
That's in June, right?
It's in May.
May.
Yeah.
Okay.
Get that letter out. And then we need to talk the costs, I think, too. Do you remember what the final number of letters that we had going out?
Vaguely recall 130 or 160, somewhere in
And
that
it may
vicinity.
come down after the...
Yeah. The question I would have there, we had talked about going and visibly inspecting the front side of the properties that are on that list, and I guess thinking out loud is whether that project should be done prior to the letters going out, or just arbitrarily send them out to
Well, my understanding was that we were going to just look at demolitions, if the building had been demolished or not. Is that correct? Does anybody?
Yeah, demolition not existing, or of course, I think we've identified the properties that were addressed on the street rather than the avenue and vice versa. So I think the database is probably going to clarify that.
I don't think we'd need to really do too much analyzing unless it was obvious renovation where the historic facade wasn't there anymore, which would make the process go quicker. If you have time to divvy those up, we can go out on our own and then bring that list down and be ready for it to go out in May.
Where is the list?
Time. George has the master list, and that's with him.
What I can do is I can sort the address field to get all of the addresses. I did it before when I thought it might be necessary to go out, and I did it before we arrived at the final list. So that would be very simple to sort them and to put it in a format where all the addresses in an area are going to be, up at the top of the page, and the next set of addresses, maybe the second set and third and so on. So
sort like by subdivision or something.
Yeah,
okay.
It'd be.
So you're not buzzing all over the place.
Yeah, you don't want to do that because you have one on the street and then there happens to be one right around the corner. So it'd be ideal if you're traversing these areas to be able to pick up as many as you could all in one particular area rather than driving all over town. Because the way the database is set up, it starts out with some data around 16th and 14th, and then the next one might be over in Royal Palm. The database, the addresses were virtually all over the place. So if you tried to visit those addresses based on the original database, it would take you a month of Sundays to get through it. So I will sort that list out and then send it over to Tammy and decide,
And she could divvy it up or however you would like to.
Yeah.
I think Jeffrey had offered to help. I did. I don't know if you were available to do that
Sure.
too. Okay. And then if for some reason you can't get to it, if one of us is done, another can pick it up.
Right.
But we'll communicate all that through to let Tammy kind of handle that. So I would expect for April that we would have that done. That would be my.
I'll have that back well before I leave.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
If that's not, that'd be great. So what dates did you happen to find?
What dates were we looking at? Were we going later in the month?
So you're coming back the 14th, is that correct, George?
15th, actually.
15th. Do you have your calendar that you could look at your last 2 weeks? I was going to pull mine out. So the last weeks of April, I was going to suggest.
If we look at the week of the 18th, the Thursday is not going to work. The April 20th, which is a Wednesday, would work. Now, if we go to the last week of April, you could have it on April 28th if you want to keep it on a Thursday.
I don't have to keep it on Thursday. I don't know about everybody else. So our May meeting is May 12th.
Correct.
Okay. And what are our options the week of the 18th?
April 20th, which is a Wednesday.
What does everyone's calendar look like on April 20th?
I'm okay for the 20th.
Okay. And that'd be 9:30, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm good.
Okay.
And what time's it going to be? 9:30?
9:30.
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to suggest that date to the other members. and throw everybody off.
Okay.
Okay. All right, so I will take ownership of the letter and send that out to you all with changes. And that leaves us to revisit it on April 20th, I guess. Okay.
Sounds good.
And then George is going to send Tammy the list for us to review. That gives us plenty of time to look at properties and see what has been demoed and what hasn't. Okay. Moving on to the historic matching grant request, just briefly. I've talked to Tim McGarry and to staff and planning staff, and I'll be coordinating with them over the next few weeks in regards to the proposal. We'll be going to council sometime in April as well to one of their meetings to ask for that match. The grant deadline is April 29th, and planning staff will be working on that grant. The next item, are there any questions on the small matching grant for the Bureau of Historic Preservation? Okay. As far as the next item, that has to do with the marker dedication we have scheduled now for May 3rd. Tammy has that date. And I think that date, though, has not yet been run by the Historical Society, right?
Right.
So I will go ahead and get in contact with them and see. That's a potential date for us. That is a regular city council meeting date, too. Having it just before 9 o'clock, which, depending on the issues of the day, may be good crowd or to come and take a look at the marker. But I will check with the Historical Society because really it's going to be up to them what their schedule is and what they envision for a program to that day.
I think 60s period dress for everybody, right?
Yeah. Mid-century. Mid-century. Vintage clothing required. Sounds good. All right. Moving on to new business. Does anyone have anything new that they'd like to bring up to the board? Okay.
I'm just as anxious as you are, I think, just to finally tie up all the things that we've been carrying for so long before we even dare talk about new business.
I agree. And under members' matters, no one has anything? Okay. Just move. Do you have anything, George, under members' matters that you'd like to share?
Not that I can think of right now.
Okay. All right. Wonderful. Chairman's matters. I just want to mention to you all that next Tuesday, I will be presenting our annual report to City Council. Evidently, this year they've asked that all the chairmen for each of the commissions for the City of Vero Beach present their final report in person. So I'm actually excited to do that. And that same night, the Arts Village will be presenting, the Cultural Arts Village will be presenting their final report.
What time?
That came out of the charrette. So the meeting starts at 6 p.m.
Okay.
And I'm not sure yet where each of those are on the agenda, but that should be coming out shortly. And then just, again, so last week, I went to the city of West Palm Beach, saw Frederick Mittner, who is the preservation planner for the city of West Palm. If you recall, Gail Lafferty had given us some info on the process for the state's historic preservation comprehensive plan. So they're going around to various cities throughout Florida and gathering feedback from planners, CLGs, historic organizations on basically what the state can do better in regards to preservation. And they did a kind of SWOT analysis with us. Evaluate what are the strengths of the state, what have been the weaknesses, what can they do better, what do we want to see going forward. So it was a really good process and had some interesting feedback. You had representatives from Lake Worth, City of West Palm, of course. There were some realtors there, commission members, architects, contractors. So it was a good variety. And I just wanted to make sure you all knew, too, and you look at the attachment from last month's agenda, Gail gave us the link where you can fill out a survey and provide your own feedback. So you don't have to go to one of these meetings, but you can still provide your feedback, and I just encourage you to do so because it's really our opportunity. I am hoping, I noticed the last plan, and I gave you all a copy. It was a pretty thick book. Something about orange marmalade was on the top. And if that rings a bell. And there were lots of pictures from like City of Fort Pierce and Sunrise Theater and in different areas. And we weren't even yet a CLG. So I'm very excited because we're going to have presence as a CLG there. And I hope that we'll have some photographic representation too. Because I know, for instance, OVS, the old Vero Ice Age site, has received a couple of grants from the State Bureau as well. So that should help because I'm sure they're putting grant-funded projects in that report. And then so that was on Thursday afternoon. And then Friday, they had a workshop. The City of West Palm Beach had a workshop on historic preservation and the Florida Building Code. And I'll just show you the flyer that was sent out. And this was if I had known what this was, I would have emphasized. Of course, we can't all be at this meeting, but my thought was, how can I perhaps bring their building official and bring Frederick up here and do a workshop with our county building department, because there were architects and contractors. We talked about issues of insurance, which we've all talked about here, and that being a problem. There's the whole flood insurance and FEMA issue in regards to if you're improving your building over 50%, having to elevate it. Exactly. And how that ties into historic buildings. And then also having that important knowledge of knowing that some of the new Florida Building Code exempts historic buildings, whether they're designated or whether they have potential for designation or potential for National Register listing. They are exempt, because I've had a few property owners contact me saying they've talked to 2 architects and the building department are going to have to tear their house down because they can't do their historic house down because they can't do what they want to do to it. And I was luckily able to put them in touch with an architect that's well versed in the historic building code section of the Florida Building Code, and they don't have to tear their house down. They don't
really
have to.
Good news for us.
Yeah, it's really good news. But I think I think I need to go ahead and make the connection with planning, and our building department is really at the county, and make sure that, number one, the buildings that are designated are flagged in their system. I believe they're flagged on our side, but what's being communicated on the front lines.
Absolutely.
I think our building official has all this information, but some of the frontline people may need some more training. And so this may be an opportunity.
There has been quite a turnover in building officials over the past couple of years, Heather. So even if, I would think this would be something that should be in writing and should be directed to the not only the building official, but the building department in general, because once that official leaves, a lot of the things that person may or may not know does not get passed on.
Right.
And I would even go so far, it should not even necessarily be limited to buildings that are dwellings that are already designated as historic, but buildings that may possibly be designated as historic. I know, using my own example in our house, we have the old double-hung sash weight type windows. Mm-hmm. And I know if we were to get involved in doing a major renovation or improvement in there, which I would not, it would very likely hit a snag in the building department because of the building codes today on hurricane impact, and the glass and the way
energy efficiency that they pass back
efficiency, the whole thing. I mean, if we were to look at our house and look at what the codes are today, they'd probably want me to burn it down. But we're certainly.
And as I was told in talking to Rick Hilburn at the State Historic Preservation Office, he's the architect up there, that I'll usually call up there if I feel like I need to validate or understand the building code a little bit better as it pertains to historic buildings. He says that historic buildings are exempt from meeting those current energy codes because there's no way that they could without ripping out original windows.
It bothers me, though, because they're referring to historic buildings. And what is a historic building?
Well, I'll have to give you the definition that they provided. Oh, that's actually, it's in the building code now. And they've adopted the Florida Building Code, excuse me. And it does mention designated buildings, National Register designated buildings, and potential. So that would cover the ones that aren't designated, if they have potential for being locally or nationally designated.
So then what defines potential? Does it go by
well,
year?
That's what
Does it
helps.
go by style? Does it go by...
That goes back to
the
our
above.
criteria for designation, and that's what we would follow, the National Register criteria. Mm-hmm. And that goes back to even more so our survey, our inventory. That's the baseline of information that the building department would start with. Mm-hmm. And that's why it's so important for us to keep our survey up to date.
Anna, what would the process then be? And I'm not sure you even know at this point. Mm-hmm. I understand if a property is already designated, but if a property is eligible to be designated, what then? I mean, is that enough in itself, or is that just allowing a waiting period for the builder to contact and relay the information to the owner of the property? And then if they decide they don't want to designate, are they still able to, not abiding by our rules of mending historically valuable properties, if they're able to just take that property, spin it any way they want to, or they still can't abide by that, then it would be an allowance for them. In other words, we don't have to say bring infill in to the tune of 14 feet but we can go ahead and make this look like Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. So, or a castle in Barcelona. So what then when you have a property that could be handled in a sensitive manner and could be designated?
Well, and this was why I really want to start by having a conversation with our building official. I know what's supposed to happen and how other communities are working together.
So that's something
the planners
we decide
and the building department
locally, or
What's your question?
Or is it a state mandate?
We have a Florida building code,
I'm
and then we
familiar
have
with it.
So what I'm just saying the structure, and within that code, there's an existing building code. And then there's a lot of new codes that have been adopted. I'm giving a very basic description of this. Mm-hmm. So at the workshop, they explain that for historic, for lack of a better word, buildings, mm-hmm. they would start with the existing building code. And there's a section in there where the state has adopted a list of regulations that pertain to historic buildings. That's the best way I can explain it. So then as new codes are made, sometimes the historic buildings are exempt from those codes. I'm getting too technical here. This is what I need to understand, what I think is important for me to do, because I can't speak for our building official when I haven't spoken to him. I want to touch base with him and find out how these buildings are being treated. Number one, making sure he has the information he needs in regards to locally designated buildings. That's just a basic, 7 to 8 or so buildings. Do they have those flags?
Surprised if they.
And also, I don't understand the intricacies
awareness.
too between our planning department and the county building. There's a lot of unknowns. So I just want to get some more information, make sure they have all the information that they need from our program to advise property owners in the best way. I think that pretty much sums it up. Mm-hmm. And then I can report back to you. Or we could have, if you need to go know some of the intricacies, we could have one of their officials come.
I don't think that's the problem here. I think what we want is the peace of mind of knowing that if indeed these things are
right. And so that's why I want to start with the communication.
Yes, make sure that they're aware of it. That's all.
Yeah.
and that they're relaying that information to property owners.
Yeah, and then the architects too, making sure the architects have the right information as well.
I sent another mailing.
I think more of a workshop. I think that's a good idea. And the assistant building official down in West Palm might be a good person. He gave this workshop and explained things very well, and would be a great person to have if we could get him up here. Maybe it's a 1 day or a half day workshop where we have Frederick talk on historic preservation and.
I don't know if you would get compliance. I don't know if you would get every architect to attend a workshop.
No, you're not going to get every. But the AIA also has meetings, which they could, have somebody come speak at one of their luncheon meetings. And, they're not, our local architects aren't, this isn't an everyday project for them. They're dealing in mostly new construction or, major renovations. They're not necessarily keeping the historic styles. So it is a small percentage, but we want to make sure that the buildings, like we said, that aren't designated yet are at least people are being informed correctly in that perhaps they don't have to remove the original wood windows and they can keep their wood siding. And it's just that simple communication I want to make sure they're aware of. When you add onto your building, here are the codes you have to meet, but here are the ones, because you're a historic building, that you don't have to comply with, or you can get an exemption from.
Anything that could provide incentive, to embrace purchase and preservation, I think, we need to showcase that to help encourage people.
Definitely, and that's a great way to put it. Yep. Okay. And I do have a copy of the presentation, so I can make sure you all get a copy of that too.
That would be great.
They gave it to us on their thumb drive. They have an office of sustainability down there as well, and that was really interesting. Incentives to put in high efficiency toilets in your house.
Wowee.
Water conservation. So I thought that was interesting. Well, that was all I had, and I don't see that we have any staff here today. So we are ready
They finally trust us.
Yeah. So I guess
So
we're ready
moved.
to adjourn. Thank you.